across deserts, mountains, jungles, and ancient kingdoms. One question decided whether a civilization would rise or collapse. How do you keep food from rotting when you have no refrigerators, no electricity, and no modern preservatives? Imagine waking up in a world where a single spoiled harvest could mean starvation for thousands, and where every grain, every fruit, every piece of meat had to survive months, sometimes years, without turning to poison. For ancient people, this wasn't a convenience. It was survival. And somehow, they mastered it. From the beginning of human civilization, storing food was as important as building walls or forging weapons. The intro to this story tells us something remarkable. Ancient people did not merely react to nature, they engineered it. Long before the modern world discovered refrigeration, ancient societies developed brilliant systems to control humidity, block microbes, slow decay, and preserve nutrients. Their methods were advanced, scientific, and incredibly effective. They built underground chambers that acted like natural fridges, created airtight containers that still confuse modern engineers, and used chemistry real chemistry to outsmart bacteria. Their knowledge kept armies marching, allowed empires to feed millions, and shaped human history in ways we rarely think about. Today, we explore exactly how they did it and why their secrets are more relevant than ever. The main body of this story begins thousands of years ago, when the earliest civilizations realized that food didn't simply rot. Randomly, it followed rules. Spoilage came from heat, moisture, air, and microorganisms. Remove these, and food could last months or years. Ancient societies, through observation and experimentation, created a wide range of solutions. In Egypt, one of the earliest food laboratories on Earth, the desert itself became a preservation tool. Egyptians dried fish, fruits, and meats by laying them under the blazing sun, sometimes brushing them with salt extracted from the Nile's dry basins. Salt pulled moisture out of food through osmosis, depriving bacteria of the water they needed to survive. Once dried and salted, meat that would normally rot in a day could last for months, even years. The Egyptians also developed sealed clay jars coated with resins, beeswax, or pitch, creating airtight environments that kept grains safe from insects and mold. Some of these jars, untouched for 3,000 years, still contain edible barley today, proving how sophisticated their methods truly were. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, the land between two great rivers, farmers learned the importance of controlling humidity. They built brick and mud granaries with tiny ventilation holes that circulated dry air but blocked pests. Inside, grains were stored in tall stacks, never touching the floor, preventing moisture from creeping upward. Archaeologists have discovered ancient granaries that were so perfectly designed that grain stored inside would remain usable for decades. Some historians even believe that civilizations like Babylon and Sumer rose to power, partly because they mastered large-scale food storage earlier than their rivals, giving them stable supplies during droughts and wars. Travel east to ancient China, and you find one of the most advanced food preservation systems on Earth. The Chinese were pioneers in fermentation, a process that transforms food using beneficial microbes. They stored vegetables in saltwater brine inside sealed clay pots, creating pickles that could last for years without spoiling. Fermentation didn't just preserve food, it made it more nutritious by producing vitamins and probiotics. They also perfected drying, smoking, and even wind storage, hanging meats in cold mountain air where temperatures remained low. Their famous underground ice pits kept food cool during summer, functioning exactly like natural refrigerators. These pits were insulated with straw and packed with winter ice that lasted months. Long before refrigerators existed, the Chinese had engineered climate control. Ancient Rome, with its massive armies and sprawling empire, relied heavily on food storage to maintain power. Roman soldiers often marched with dried sausages, salted pork, vinegar-soaked vegetables, and hard biscuits called buchalatum that could last up to 5 years. The Romans also pioneered amphorae, large sealed clay vessels coated inside with pine resin. These containers stored olives, wine, grains, and even fish sauce for extremely long periods. Some amphiry found underwater after 2,000 years still contain preserved food remains, showing how effective airtight storage can be. Romans also built enormous granaries with raised floors supported by stone pillars. Air circulated beneath, keeping grains dry and cool, which prevented mold. The scale and efficiency of these granaries were unmatched until the industrial age. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks perfected drying as both an art and a science. Their method for preserving figs and grapes became so widespread that dried fruits became a major export and staple food. They also used a technique called oil sealing, where vegetables, herbs, and cheese were submerged in olive oil, creating an oxygen-free environment. Without oxygen, bacteria couldn't grow. This simple principle is still used today. Travel toward the Middle East again, and you encountered the Persians, who achieved something astonishing. The world's first walk-in refrigerated building, the Persians built massive structures called Yakhchals, made from mud and natural materials with incredibly thick walls. These domed buildings kept temperatures inside, near freezing even in desert heat. They stored ice, sorbets, dairy, fruits, and eben meat. Some Yakhchals functioned for centuries without damage. Their design was so advanced that modern architects still study them for sustainable cooling techniques. In suit, as the ancient Indians used spices, not just for flavor, but for preservation. Turmeric, garlic, ginger, and black pepper contain antimicrobial compounds that inhibit bacterial growth. When meats were coated with spiced pastes and dried in the sun, they lasted far longer than untreated food. Pickling was also deeply embedded in Indian culture. Fruits and vegetables were submerged in mustard oil, spicy brine, or vinegar, creating jars of food that lasted through entire monsoon seasons. This knowledge became essential during long sea voyages, helping traders cross the Indian Ocean. In cold regions like Scandinavia and Siberia, nature itself became the ultimate freezer. Ancient people froze fish, meat, and berries during winter and stored them underground or inside wooden huts lined with snow. Cold storage preserved food perfectly without chemicals. In mountainous areas, people built root cellars, underground rooms where constant, cool temperatures prevented. These cellars, insulated with stone, earth, and wood, kept vegetables fresh for months. The concept was so effective that root cellars were used globally until the invention of refrigeration. One of the most ingenious preservation techniques came from indigenous peoples of North America. This survival superfood was made by mixing dried meat, tallow-rendered fat, and berries into a dense, portable block. Because fat creates an airtight seal around the meat, pemmican could last up to 10 years without rot. Explorers later relied heavily on it during long expeditions. It is considered one of the most efficient foods ever created by humans. Salt, smoke, oil, sun, cold, fermentation, dryness. Every region used what nature offered. But the key to all these methods was scientific understanding. Even if they didn't call it science, they knew moisture had to be removed, airflow controlled, pests blocked, containers sealed, and microbes managed. They understood chemistry when they used salt and acids. They understood microbiology when they used fermentation. They understood physics when they built underground coolers. These were not primitive tricks. They were sophisticated systems created through centuries of observation and experimentation. If we look closely, we realize something powerful. Ancient people weren't just trying to store food, they were engineering stability. Every jar of grain that survived winter meant one more family that didn't starve. Every barrel of dried fish meant an army could march farther. Every salted slab of meat meant a civilization could survive droughts, wars, and long journeys. Food storage shaped trade routes, influenced military strategies, and gave rise to empires. Without it, civilization itself would not exist. And now, as modern society faces new challenges, climate change, supply chain disruptions, and a growing global population, the ancient world offers wisdom that is more relevant than ever. Sustainable preservation techniques like drying, fermenting, and root cellaring consume almost no energy, making them environmentally friendly compared to refrigeration and industrial freezing. These methods remind us that technology doesn't always mean machines. Sometimes the smartest solutions are the simplest ones nature already gives us. In closing, the story of ancient food storage is really a story about human resilience. It shows how creativity, observation, and adaptation allowed entire civilizations to thrive long before science had a name. They didn't wait for inventions. They built their own. They worked with nature, not against it. And their discoveries still feed us today, hidden in every pantry, every refrigerator, every preserved snack we take for granted. The next time you open your fridge or store something for later, remember that the foundations of those habits were laid thousands of years ago by people who looked at a world full of challenges and said, "We will find a way." Their legacy lives on not just in history books, but in every bite of food that survives longer than it should. If this changed how you see ancient engineering, hit that like button. And also subscribe this channel for more rediscovered genius. And tell me in the comments, what other mysteries should we uncover next?